Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Original Remake Podcast, a show where we take the role of Hollywood executives shamelessly exploiting your nostalgia for money. But we do it for love instead of greed. My name is Pat, and I'm joined by my wife Amy,
Hi, everyone.
Andrea,
Hey!
and her husband Nick.
Heyo!
Today we'll be discussing the merits and pitfalls of remaking the cult classic Big Trouble in Little China. So for context here, I think it's important to understand where we're coming from. Amy and I have seen this film many, many times. It is one of our favorite films. It's up there. Nick, Andrea, this is your first time seeing the movie this week. Kind of give us your thoughts there, seeing this as 30-something adults.
I'm
Knee-jerk
here
reaction.
to tell you that Amy and Pat have bad taste.
My knee-jerk reaction is complete agreement with you. But honestly, I watched it, almost 2 weeks ago now? And I got a bit of a rewatch today when you were catching up. And,
Yes, I watched it an hour ago.
yeah. So I caught a lot of things my second time through. And I noticed just a lot more that I'm sure we'll dig into here in a minute.
Oh, God, yeah.
But I noticed a lot more second time through. I mean, don't get me wrong, the practical effects did not get better with time.
If I could sum up this movie in one phrase, it would be, that is an hour of my life I'm never going to get back ever again.
Oh.
I'm going to jump on Nick's point there that the second time around, it is a film that I don't understand how this is possible with a film that is this corny and the special effects, which really don't hold up. You know, it's definitely a product of its time. But every time you watch it, for some reason, it gets better. Even though the action scenes are, kind of boring by today's standards, and the dialogue is terrible, and you can't tell whether the jokes are intentional or whether it's just someone who's a bad writer wrote this movie.
Or some crazy, wacky combination of all of those.
Or maybe all of the above, yeah. So, I think, to kind of sum it up, it's a product of its time. The action is terrible. So one of the reasons I picked it for a remake is the action definitely needs to be updated and can be updated. There are so many great kind of kung fu style movies out there these days that if you just took the movie, didn't cut a single line of dialogue, and reshot all the action, I think it's a great movie because the comedy, the one-liners here, whether they're intentional or not, they're 10 out of 10.
I don't know that I agree with
I
that.
don't know if I agree with that either. Just a quick aside, for those people that would like to listen to our podcast, but do not know what the hell this movie's about, should we give a quick synopsis?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. To those people who haven't seen the movie, I'll give a quick synopsis, but honestly, you should just go see the movie.
At least twice.
At least twice, maybe 3 times.
Because the first one's gonna hurt you.
Yeah. So, Big Trouble in Little China is about Jack Burton and Wang Chi and their girlfriends get kidnapped and they have to go into Little China, into a secret ancient sorcerer's lair to retrieve them before he marries one and murders the other, but at certain parts of the movie you're not sure which one he's murdering and which one he's marrying. It unclear.
Yeah, essentially. But kind of like a ragtag way of getting there, because I'm not going to give too much away here. I know we're going to kind of tear this movie apart and recast it, but without giving too much away here, like, you don't know which direction you're going to be headed from one scene to the next.
You really can't tell because the only stipulation about the woman that he needs to find in order to marry/sacrifice is that this woman needs to have green eyes.
Spoilers.
I originally thought it had to be a person who was Chinese and had green eyes, but no, green eyes. You could be a hermaphrodite, green eyes. It's fine. It's fine.
It is one of those things where we looked up the actress that played Mao Ying, and she was born in Toledo, Ohio, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. She did not look Asian to me. And she's like half Asian, I think. But I'm like,
And
you know.
neither of the lead actresses have green eyes. They wore contact
Which,
lenses.
when we get into recasting, I think I didn't pick green-eyed actresses either.
But for it to be such a pivotal part of the movie, and to be like leaned on that hard, I kind of expected like, oh, okay, well, maybe.
To be
She's
fair,
actually got green eyes. But...
Kim Cattrall looks real good with green eyes.
She does.
True.
This is probably a sidebar, but I think maybe you guys haven't seen Sex and the City. I've only seen like the episodes that I watch in the background while Amy has them on. But she's definitely the prettiest of the Sex and the City ladies.
I forgot she was in that.
Wow. Not a lot of immediate agreement. All right.
I don't know about
She is one of the prettiest, but I'd say it's between her and the girl that plays Charlotte, who's the brunette.
All right. I'll give you that one. That'd probably be my top 2 as well. Anyways, that's a different podcast.
Yes.
Ranking the Sex and the City ladies. Now, yeah, I guess to sum up kind of the plot, this movie is about a truck driver who walks into 3 different buildings and then gets into a fight in each one of them and then walks out of those buildings. And sometimes they're with people he's rescued, and sometimes they're with people that he hasn't rescued because they've been captured while he's trying to rescue someone else, and then they have to go back in and get that person, and now it's another time for a fight scene. I think that's a good overview of the movie. Mm-hmm. That's that if you know what you're getting into now. There's no high concept here, right?
Oh, clearly not.
No.
No.
You know what you're getting into
not.
within the first 10 minutes. The main character is a blowhard.
He is clearly the hero of the story. Except he's really not.
He's the hero of his own story.
He thinks he is. He certainly does. He certainly thinks he is.
Well, that's one of the things I love about the movie is Jack Burton thinks he's the hero. He's the hero on the poster. He's the hero in the credits of the movie. But Wang Chi is the real hero because he is the person who actually does all of the important things, with the exception of again, we're probably just going to have to spoil this movie to talk about it.
Yeah, fair.
With the exception of the person who ends up killing Lo Pan, the main villain, the sorcerer, he doesn't do anything. I mean, he literally gets knocked out for multiple important action scenes on purpose. Like it's a bit in the movie that he is incompetent.
Absolutely.
Well, I was reading a little bit about the movie while I was watching it and getting bored at the same time. That that was actually the intention that the writers had and the director had, was that he thinks he's the hero, but he's really not. Like, Wang Chi is the hero.
Yeah.
But the studio didn't get it. And I feel like that is very obvious by the marketing and the credits and all that.
Yeah. From what I understand, they basically dumped this movie because they didn't know what to do with it. Yeah, it's like the opposite of a white savior, right? It's like anti-white savior.
You know, that is actually one comment I do need to make is looking at the poster, looking at the summary, looking at the pre-movie, this is what you're getting into, synopsis and all that, before even clicking play. I thought it was going to be the most Americanized BS movie that I was ever going to watch. Just looking at the poster and everything else. I thought it was going to be your typical sexist white hero running through, saving all the women, and making fun of every race along the way.
Yeah.
And that's very not what it is.
Yeah.
It's almost...
It feels like it wants to be.
No. And I think that's the art of it. Like, I was 100% in hater camp for my first watch through. But after kind of going through it again today, I think that's kind of the beauty of it. It's almost like an homage to Chinese culture. Thank you. It's like an homage to Chinese culture. It points out a lot of dissimilarities between Eastern and Western cultures without going the campy, making fun of it racist route.
Right.
I mean, it is campy and it is making fun of it.
It's tongue in cheek, but I wouldn't describe it as making fun of culture. I think you putting it in its place in the 80s. Back then, you wouldn't have like a diversity person to like be in charge of making sure you kind of got the facts right, or you know what I mean. Like the 80s is not that far away from just white actors doing flat out yellow face when it comes to needing an Asian star in a movie, right? It's probably closer to that than it is to us right now. We're
paging John Wayne.
Yeah.
I was honestly surprised by that. You know, kind of keeping that in the back of my mind about where this movie came from, what time this movie came out, and what it tries to show itself as being on the cover. That's what I thought we were getting into. And it was a pleasant surprise to not be that kind of mess.
Yeah, it just, every time you expect something from a movie outside of just action, the movie just kind of does the opposite, I think, as a wink to you. Like, even at the end, you know, in a normal movie, he would kiss Kim Cattrall, and then he's like, "No, I'm not going to. See you later, babe." And then he just goes back into driving his truck.
I don't understand that. Can someone please explain why he goes, nope?
I don't think anyone can.
I literally think, and I don't know this for sure, I didn't do that much research on, like, the behind the scenes of the movie, but I legitimately think the writers were like, normally he'd kiss the girl here and they'd fall in love.
Not.
So let's just have him literally walk away with his money. Like, he gets his money. He actually gets more money. He gets triple the money he's owed. And then he just walks out.
Yep. I think that's a constant theme in this movie as well. Is every time you think you've got it figured out, they subvert your expectations and just go in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
You're
Even
expecting
if it's not
something.
a good direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, rarely is it a good direction. Rarely is it for the better. It's just a different direction.
At the end of the day, he's still, like, his objective is still the same as it was at the beginning, which is, I just want my truck back.
Yeah, he wants his truck and someone owes him money.
Yeah.
There you
Yes.
go. There you go. The truck is his real love.
Yeah. And at the end of the movie, he has his truck and his money, and he leaves.
And he's gone.
And a big giant monster in the back.
True.
Yeah. I honestly thought that they were going to play with the idea of the movie opens and closes on Burton telling the story over the CB radio. I figured they were just going to, like, pan to someone else in a different truck being like, what the hell is this guy smoking?
Yeah.
That would have been funny.
Yeah, who's listening to this? Who's listening to this story? This old Jack Burton says at a time like this.
Yeah, there were a couple good one-liners.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to bring up is there's the obvious one-liners, right, where, you know, old Jack Burton says, and may the wings of liberty never lose a feather, but there's just some, or you were not put on this world to get it, you know what I mean? They're just like corny, you know, one-liners that are perfect for a B movie. But there's even like small stuff that on multiple rewatches kind of just makes me laugh hysterically, like when he's on the phone with the insurance company to try and get his truck back, and some guy in the background just says, "The Lords of Death have it." Like, that's helpful at all. You know, or even in the truck going to the airport, Wang is, you know, tells Jack Burton that he doesn't want to talk about the girl. He's like, "I don't want to talk about it, Jack." And then literally, without prompt, he launches into a plot-heavy discussion about the girl and who she is and what she means to him. Like, just stuff like that. It's like, Jack, I don't want to talk about it, but also the plot demands that I now talk about it for several minutes. And again, I don't know if it's bad writing or good writing. I can't tell, but I love it either way, right?
Well, Pat, let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. This is your pick. This is... Yeah. We're here because of this. I was required to watch this because of you. So let me ask, why? And why do you want to remake this one?
I'll be honest, the reason I picked this one first is because when I was coming up for the idea of the podcast, we would talk about movies we'd like to remake. I had just watched this in a hotel in Indiana. I was at Gen Con, and my friend put it on, and I was like, I've seen this movie 10 times. I could go to bed right now. And I stayed up and watched the whole movie again. I'm like, man, I love this movie. The thing is, the action, let's be honest, the action is a product of its time more than anything else. And that is not an insult to the movie. You know, most movies in the 80s didn't have stellar action like that. Admittedly, less than a decade later, you'd have like Terminator 2, which is like, to this day, a pinnacle of action movies. But movies that are that old, generally speaking, their action doesn't tend to hold up as much as modern action movies. And that there's an obvious reason. There's better technology, better stunt work, that type of thing. So I'm going to be honest, not a lot about the plot changes, but the action I'd like to update and make it slightly less stupid and really more visceral. Like I would love to remake this movie but give it the action of The Raid or the Kingsman movies, Snowpiercer, those type of movies where it's very visceral and very real. And like when you feel a punch, you feel a punch, right?
Very well choreographed.
Exactly. And during kind of one of the final action set pieces, Wang is fighting, I believe it's Rain, with the swords. Mm-hmm. And they're just literally flying through the air. Like you could tell they didn't have enough to make it a real sword fight. So having them do a real sword fight, and you can make it kind of the Matrix style kung fu and sword fighting where like it's not realistic, but it's just cool, right? And so having that kind of putting the money into the action would make this movie be great without having to change much about the plot. You know what I mean? Like for me, the charm is that it's a B movie. I wouldn't want Hollywood to remake this not as a B movie. I just want a B movie with better action. Which, if you think about it, a lot of the best action movies are just that. They're kind of B action movie plots, just with great action.
Okay, I think that's fair. So, in that same vein, who would you recast and how?
All right, so yeah, I've got a. First of all, before we get to the casting, in this version of the movie, I've left out Margot and Eddie, who are the two characters. Margot's the reporter, and Eddie is like the second lawyer to Gracie, and they both stay behind for the final action set piece. And I don't know why they're in the movie at all.
Yeah, they're kind of pointless.
They only show up to deliver some plot explanations, and then Eddie does kind of do some fighting for some reason, even though he's a lawyer, in one of the scenes. But then they both get left behind, and I actually kind of love the fact that they fall in love at the end. Like they have a crush on each other, so they're, the other characters like, you guys stay behind, and then at the end of the movie you can kind of, go back to your place.
Know
or
that
whatever.
they have a happy ending too.
Yeah, they're the actual characters with a happy ending because they stay behind.
So did the camera follow the wrong couple?
Maybe
at the end.
Maybe.
I mean, you follow Jack Burton out the door after he, just straight up, nah, I'm good.
Fair. So yeah, they're not in this movie, so I didn't cast them. But if they were, it's still, if you remade the movie and they were still in, it wouldn't be a big issue. But for me, to keep the movie around 90 minutes, I think is important because there's nothing groundbreaking here. Right? Like, you don't have to add extra scenes for plot reason or like to explore the theme of the movie. That's not what we're here for.
Yeah, this movie's not about themes.
It sure isn't.
I mean, maybe that's not true.
I think there is an underlying theme, and I think there is an underlying message of, again, being that campy action film where it flips the typical American hero on its head and can still turn it into an okay film.
Now it's just okay, huh?
Listen, it was straight up garbage, and it was slightly elevated to dog feces, and then you made me rewatch it. I mean, you didn't make me. You were just watching it, and I kind of got sucked into it. And so I get what you're saying when you were in the hotel room and it was on, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to do, where did my hour and a half go?
Yeah. Nick, if you watch this movie a third time, you're going to be like, is this movie good? How?
No, I can't.
No, you really are. It's going to get you.
I can't do it. I refuse. I can't do it. But yeah, no, I don't know, man. I don't know. It was rough.
Let's go on to casting. So the way this works, this is our first episode. The person who chooses the movie does the recasting. Of course, other people can jump in with their own choices as well. So I'll start off with Jack Burton, the air quote hero of the movie. And first thing I want to say is apparently there's been for a couple years the possibility of a remake of this with The Rock, which I do not care for.
I did see that.
Because
in my searches online, I did see that.
The Rock can be funny, but I don't know if he has the self-humility. Like, he seems like a very ego-happy person, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like an ego-driven person. Whereas I feel like you need an actor who can, make fun of themselves a little bit, because that's what, that's what Kurt Russell does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I could see The Rock in doing something like that. But what I was reading announced last year, is the project is kind of like low priority at the moment, but it's not going to be a traditional remake, which is good because then this podcast can happen.
True. You know what though? If they did something with The Rock, and I think Amy, you were saying if they did something like Jumanji, where they did
that's what
not
they
a
said.
remake.
Yeah.
That's what they said in the article, that it wasn't going to be your traditional remake, that it was going to be a spiritual successor.
Like a reimagining, kind of?
Not even a reimagining, a continuation of the story.
Huh.
Like, The Rock's first Jumanji, the first remake of Jumanji, wasn't a remake.
No.
It was Jumanji chapter whatever.
Okay.
It was...
And you know what? I take it back. The Rock, you can do it if you want. If it's not a remake, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's a traditional remake in, like, what you're putting together with these casting choices we're about to hear.
Yeah. Fair.
It
So
would be a
yeah,
successor.
for my Jack Burton, I went with Jason Momoa, who I'm a big fan of. People probably know him most from Game of Thrones. He played Khal Drogo in season 1 and then was promptly killed off.
You mean Ronan
Yeah, I was going to say, you mean Ronan.
from Stargate.
Oh yeah, he was in Stargate too. I haven't seen all of the Stargates, okay?
Listen, I will come
should.
right out and say it. I am a Jason Momoa hipster fan.
Yeah.
Like,
Fair.
Obviously,
I knew him
if you knew
before he was
that.
cool. No, he was great in that. If you haven't seen Stargate Atlantis,
think
Stargate
so.
Atlantis on its own is not the best of the series. It does hold a special place because there's a lot of cool things. But
This is not a Stargate
Jason Momoa
podcast.
as Ronan was amazing in that. And if you take that Jason Momoa and drop him into the Jack Burton role, that would be amazing.
But as it is, I want to hear Amy's pick.
Okay.
My pick for Jack Burton, I was gonna pick Chris Pratt because I feel he has the comic value, the blockbuster sell, and just the second I saw Kurt Russell, I thought of the Guardians of the Galaxy. It was his father. It just
Okay.
maybe it's a little too obvious, but also I personally wouldn't remake this movie. But if I had to choose somebody, I would choose the one that would be closest to the original actor.
Okay. I can see that. I could see a Chris Pratt from like a Parks and Rec.
Not so much hero, but he does have action background.
I don't like Chris Pratt as a person. I don't know why. I get to not. Every time I look at him, I just kind of want to punch him in the face. And I like some of the movies he's in. He's basically got an Amazon contract where he just signs up for generic action movies now, and that makes me want to hate him. And I realize that Big Trouble in Little China is the '80s version of a generic action movie, but not now.
But it didn't do so well in the 80s as the generic movies do now.
True.
I
That
mean,
is true.
the two... Was it 2 movies? The movies he did for Amazon, they didn't do that great either. Like, people panned them. Like, whenever it was the Tomorrow War, I think of that.
Yeah, I didn't care for that at all. Very, very
I
predictable.
wanted to like that.
I liked it, but it was just kind of like, okay.
Like, I tried real hard to like that one, but saw every step of that movie coming.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious.
Yes. Yeah, and I think he's a good Aquaman, though, right? Sorry, I'm jumping back to Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa has, like, the comedic effect that Chris Pratt can have, but he also, I think, can come across as a real action star, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Whereas Chris Pratt will always be, you're only thin temporarily until you stop starring in those action movies, and then you're going to be right back to being a fat dude. There's nothing wrong with that, because I'm a big guy myself.
One of us.
But I know you're faking.
So, Pat, can I ask you a question then? In your remake, would you make Jack Burton then a character that wasn't just the background savior? Or would you make him the actual?
No, he's
hero
still
of the movie?
he's still the idiot, and that's why I want Jason Momoa, because Jason Momoa, like, you see it on the internet, he's like Henry Cavill as well. Like, they both have this persona on the internet of being like very lovable people. Like, you'll see like fans taking photos with him all the time. Sure. You see in the movies, he always seems like a jokey guy. So I feel like he's the perfect type of person that he would sign up for a movie where he says, "Let's go," shoots up in the air and knocks himself out with a rock, and then misses the whole action scene. Like, he's exactly the type of person. Whereas I don't know whether Chris Pratt would do that, right?
You gotta see Stargate Atlantis, Ronan.
All right.
You do.
Because you're describing Jason Momoa in Stargate Atlantis. Like, he's this super gruff, manly man, like, doesn't speak, stone-faced, raw, like, don't mess with him, he'll break you in half. But then, at the drop of the hat, like, Taylor, one of his, like, sisterly kind of characters, and for a hot second, almost a love interest in the show, just, like, turns into a child and starts joking and playing, and just like you see on like late shows and whatnot, where he's what was it, like he took Jimmy Fallon or no, James Corden on like a motorcycle ride, and James Corden's practically peeing himself, and Jason Momoa is just leaning hard into that. But what you've described is Jason Momoa in Stargate Atlantis, and I think seeing that character in the Jack Burton role, I have a feeling that's what you're feeling out here.
I think so, and I want to like Chris Pratt because I loved Parks and Rec, and Guardians of the Galaxy is great. But ever since whatever that Infinity War movie is, where he ruined their plan, I just hate the character, and I hate him now for not being like, I refuse to shoot the scene where he ruins the. They could have gotten Thanos. That's all I'm saying.
But is that Chris
It's all
Pratt's
Chris
fault?
Pratt's fault.
Yes, yeah, because he
Nothing
plays
to do with the writing at all.
All Chris Pratt's
Writers and directors are blameless in this. All right, let's move on because we got a couple more. It's a pretty big cast. Wang Chi, the real hero of the film. I've selected Simu Lee, I think is the way you pronounce it. He is the person from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is in my top 5 Marvel movies ever made. I love this movie, and he was fantastic in it. He can do the action very clearly. He's funny. He's funny. He can act.
And that deadpan funny, too.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's exactly what Dennis Dunn was in the original. He never played it for laughs. He was just funny and competent at the same time. You know what I mean? Whereas Jack Burton was incompetent and funny. You know what I mean? He's kind of the opposite of that, right? He's the hero, so I would cast him.
I feel like he's a great pick. Like, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And I haven't seen him in anything else, to be honest with you. I know he's been in Kim's Convenience, which is a show I've heard good things about, but outside of that, I haven't seen him in pretty much anything, but he was so good in Shang-Chi that I just want him. I want him in my movie. Does anyone have any alternate suggestions?
No, I agree. I like that.
All right, and then I'm gonna jump over a couple casting choices to go to the main villain, Lo Pan, and I'm choosing Tony Leung, and this is the person who plays Shang-Chi's dad in Shang-Chi: Legend of the Ten Rings. One of the reasons I love Shang-Chi is the villain is so good. His dad has an actual reason for doing what he's doing. He's not just a terrible person, and I really, really love that actor. I've actually seen him in weirdly, I've seen him in a 2000s Korean or maybe Japanese rom-com called In the Mood for Love. I think it's Korean. Don't ask me why I've seen this. I think someone on YouTube recommended it to me at one point, and he's a terrific actor. He really is. That is a great. If anyone is looking for a Korean rom-com, In the Mood for Love is fantastic, and he's fantastic in it. But as the father and the main villain, he was fantastic, and so why not just keep him as a villain in this film? Because Lo Pan is definitely played for laughs for the most part, right? In this one, like he's definitely not a threatening villain at all.
Well, no, Jack handled him.
Yes.
So clearly,
he got
not
killed
the big threat
by a knife to the head.
Yeah,
but that's the joke. Jack's
scene.
Jack's superpower is he has good reflexes.
Uh-huh.
That's I love that. I love that about the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
I love that Jack would lose. Like Jack throws the knife first, and then is terrible at it, and then as soon as he has to react, it's natural. It's so good.
It was so bad. When I watched that the first time, I'm like, wait, we built up to this?
Yeah. You built up to this, and then one of the other main villains getting a rock dropped on him, essentially, is how they kill the other guy.
Like,
or the guy that just self-implodes like a creeper from Minecraft.
yeah, that was weird. And
You know what? I will give it to the special effects crew for that, though.
that was really gross.
Like for the time, that was pretty good.
All right, so that's my low pawn, and then to kind of jump back up to the female leads, Gracie Law. I've got Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Can't remember how to pronounce it. What do we think?
I would pick someone else, but I would like to hear your reasoning.
I just think she's the perfect B movie actress. If you look at everything she's been in, there's nothing amazing in here.
I disagree.
I mean, Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim?
But that's
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna level with you, and don't hate me, because
Oh,
of
Oh
all
God,
people,
you're going there.
don't do it.
of
don't
all
think-
people, I should have seen this movie. I've never
you've
seen.
never seen it.
Oh, you
Oh,
haven't seen
okay,
it.
okay. I thought you were going to
Okay.
tell me you didn't like it, which was going to be a whole nother thing about how you just declared war on the internet.
Do you know what's really funny about Scott Pilgrim versus the World? Do you know who's in that movie? Chris Evans and Brie Larson.
right.
I know Brie Larson was in it,
Yeah.
That
and I'm a
is
Brie Larson
crazy.
fan too. I almost cast her in this movie.
Then you need to see the Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, we're going to have another movie night.
Yeah.
So the reason I didn't pick Brie Larson for this is because I think her profile's too high, and I think that Mary Elizabeth Winstead
Winstead.
Winstead would she's been in the type of movies that would make her great for this. She was in kind of that prequel to The Thing, which I actually thought was quite good. Which is, by the way, The Thing, also made by John Carpenter. Nick, have you seen The Thing?
I have not.
Andrea, have you seen The Thing?
I have not.
The original.
The original Thing
very
is a
good.
true classic. John Carpenter has this weird thing where like half of his movies are terrible B movies, and half of his movies are
Classics.
legit capital C classics,
and
like
should not be remade.
and should not be remade. But I liked they did a prequel to The Thing, which I quite enjoyed. Also called it The Thing for some reason. I don't know why.
No originality.
Yeah, no subtitle or anything, just The Thing. But
Gotta sell it.
yeah. So she was also in Live Free or Die Hard, which is one of my favorite Die Hard movies, the fourth one.
Oh.
She was in that?
She plays his daughter.
Oh my God.
Oh.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
Oh.
See, she was that forgettable in it.
So Live Free or Die Hard, it's part of the Die Hard series, so it's automatically a good movie. But like,
Not true. The fifth one is terrible.
There's a fifth one?
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so of the 4 original Die Hard movies,
Yeah.
that's solid like number 3 on the list. Nope, sorry, it's 4th place. I'm sorry. The original trilogy, like it's Die Hard with a Vengeance is number 1 in my book.
Oh.
Then the original at Nakatomi Towers, and followed by the Dulles Airport.
The Die Hard, just Die Hard.
Die
2.
Harder.
Die Harder.
Die Hard,
Yeah.
Die Harder.
Yeah. I'd probably switch them around. The original Die Hard, then With a Vengeance, then Live Free or Die Hard, and then Die Harder, and then the fifth one doesn't exist because it's really terrible. No excuses. All right, but anyways, moving on. She's just that B actress. You put green eyes on her, you're good
She'll
to
be
go.
fine.
I do have a pick for
Okay.
Gracie. I was trying to think of an actress that might fit that profile, and the closest person that I could come up with would be Maya Hawke, who plays Robin in Stranger Things.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
She has blue eyes, I think. But she has that air. She has that air of like being smart, but also kind of being airheaded a little bit. Because I felt like that Gracie was a little bit of an airhead. I don't quite know how to quantify it, but she felt like a little silly to me. I mean, she was, sharp and intelligent and the brains as, what's her face? The character that doesn't really matter.
Mao-Ling.
Margot.
Margot.
Margot. She was like, oh yeah, she's the brains or whatever. I feel like that she has the wherewithal to be smart enough to portray that she's the quote unquote brains. And she also like does have, at least in my opinion, the chops to do action, because a good chunk of Stranger Things is a lot of action. You know, if you've seen the most recent season, I mean, you know, she's carrying a gun and Molotov cocktails
and I mean, Stranger Things itself is a throwback to all these 80s properties, right?
Yeah.
So
there you go.
I like that pick. I didn't know this, but it makes sense that she's the daughter of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman, yep.
Yes.
I knew Uma Thurman, yeah.
And when you look at Maya Hawke, you can and see it.
It's almost like you did one of those, you know, internet face transplant things. Like it's like, oh yeah, that definitely makes sense. I like that pick. I haven't watched the latest season of Stranger Things. Season 3 wasn't great, so I didn't continue with season 4. But
oh, my friend, you have nothing but time.
Yeah,
that's
rewatch
true.
it with you.
All right, I'll get around to it.
Absolutely, do need to watch it.
Yeah, you do need to watch it. It's real good.
All right, that's a good pick. The other lead, Mao Ying. So here's the thing: in the original movie, does she even say a word? I can't remember. Maybe one or two words.
Very little.
I think she says "ow."
She's just a face.
Yeah. So I've gone with someone who's a relatively unknown, and that is Tian Jing. And that is, I believe she's a Chinese actress. Where I know her from is Pacific Rim 2 Uprising, which is a movie that not a lot of people like, but I do. I don't think it's great, but I do enjoy it. She's also been in a movie I've never seen called The Great Wall, starring Matt Damon as a literal white savior. Ironically, which I never bothered to see, and I like that. This is a movie I normally would see, but I was like, you know what? I don't care.
Yeah, actually, I think I decided too that it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
but I don't care how good it is.
In Pacific Rim 2, I thought she was pretty good, and she she's a model, and she kind of has a low enough profile, in my opinion, that you could kind of get her for a role that, to be perfectly honest, is a little bit damsel in distressy. And by a little bit, I mean that's literally the function of her character. She has nothing else.
Well, would you put her in more of an action sequence then, that you know that she could handle it?
I mean, maybe after the mesmerizing is done, she can do some fighting. I've got no problem with that. I also have no problem with her just kind of being the damsel in distress. That's fine if we're doing, because one of the things we've got to decide as we move on here is, where are we setting this movie? Are we updating it to today or keeping in the 80s? So we'll get to that in a second, but I would probably keep her scenes low. Like, I'd obviously give her some lines and have her actually be a character in the movie, as opposed to someone who's just talked about. But outside of that, I don't think we don't need a big star for this. So that was kind of my pick for her.
Okay.
And then lastly, before we move on, Egg Shen, the best character in the whole movie, the person who, without Margot and Eddie, has to explain all the plot points.
He's also the good magic guy.
He is also the good magic guy. He has the purple magic gem. I think a great pick is Dennis Dunn, who played the original Wang Chi in the original.
Interesting.
Nice. I like that.
And he's old enough now to play kind of this wise old man. So I thought, let's just bring him back. He hasn't been in a ton of things that we would know about. So I bet he loves this movie. You can see him in like interviews for the movie and stuff. And like every now and then he'll go to like a Comic-Con or something. I think he would be down to do this movie. You throw him some cash, he'd come back in that role.
I
love that idea, actually.
I love that idea. And put a pin in that for when we get to the next part of...
especially for how typically remakes of any caliber have some sort of throwback or cameo. Mm-hmm. To do homage to the original. Sometimes movies will overdo it and it'll turn into just straight up fan service, but when done right, and I think this would be one of those situations where the previous savior of the film turns into the lifeline of the new film.
And I think that if Egg Shen is that his last name? Yeah, Egg Shen. I think if he's doing a lot of expositionary legwork, then it's fitting that he is the actor to do all of that exposition, since he was part of the story, like the actual hero of the original.
Right.
Yeah, fair. I want to kind of move on here because time is getting low, but for the rain, thunder, and lightning, I'm not going to say these names out loud. They're people from the movie The Raid. And if you've seen The Raid or The Raid 2, you know why. They're just awesome at action movies, and so they would be great villains. But basically, just insert someone really good at martial arts here. They don't need to be, there's no need for great actors here, though these guys are, the guys I picked are great actors, and these don't have to be all men either, like, there's, you could cast a female martial artist for this as well. But yeah, insert your favorite martial artist here that's not too big of a star to be a sidekick, and there you go.
Wait, I don't see Chuck Norris in that list.
Too old.
Ooh.
Touché.
So kind of the last segment here is talking about specifically, what would we change about the film? And I've written down here in the notes, do we keep this film in the 80s, ? And then just the word probably afterwards.
Agreed.
Can anyone make an argument for updating the age, or do you just keep it in the 80s?
Oh, I think it works fantastic in the 80s.
I think it does too. Like, there are some things that just may not work. Like, as dumb as this is, I mean, I guess you could update it to being like, the internet servicer. But, okay, so I feel like that movies that were made before cell phones have, like, cell phones solve a lot of problems.
Correct. They film a lot of things. You can call people from anywhere. You can locate people from anywhere.
Yes.
Yep, exactly.
And I think a lot of movies immediately just break and can't work if you have anything set, like, modern, Like, I could just look on the internet to see what the story of this guy is and why he needs, someone with green eyes or what have you. I feel like that with modern conveniences, the movie doesn't...
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of plot holes in this movie, but with modern conveniences, there's even more.
Yeah, if you were to update it to, like, 2020s, you'd have to say, well, the magic of Little China means that cell phones don't work here, and then no one would have to have asked any questions after that.
I mean, you could pull that off, though. Like, you walk into Little China, you look at your phone and be like, the service here is always awful. Like, just one little bit of exposition and you can fix that for the movie. But I do agree that there's a lot of technology things that would kind of break this.
Did you know I wrote a paper on that in college?
Didn't. We'll have to touch on that at some point.
Yes.
But what I was getting to is, like, when Jack and Wing Chi go break in, if you will, into the sewers, they, like, walk past the security desk as electricians or power company guys or something.
And they did such a bad job.
It was so bad.
Yeah, they walk in with an actual phone, and for children listening to this podcast, or young people in their 20s, a phone is something you used to have to plug into a wall. So he walks in with a phone, waves it at them, and then just keeps walking past them, as though, like, that would get you into anywhere, right?
Right. And it's like, he's not even wearing, like, a mechanic jumpsuit or anything. He's not carrying any tools. Like, he walked in with more of an outfit.
Shirt. Yeah.
Right? Like, he had a terrible tie and the jacket, and his hair combed back badly. He, didn't even... He just walked by, waving the phone, and, like, yelling.
Yeah. I think he literally yelled, geez, the plumbing, can you believe it, or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Completely unrelated.
Yeah, at least, carry a ladder in and pretend you're there for a reason, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, and I think if you were to modernize this, security cameras break that.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it needs to stay where it is. I think it works best where it is if you want to keep the feel of the movie alive.
Yeah, agreed. So kind of jumping on to the plot is so dumb, only an idiot would think it would work. Every time they send Jack Burton into somewhere, it's the stupidest mission ever, right? When he goes into the White Tiger, which is the original place where they keep her, it's a prostitution building, and they send him in there, and the first thing he says, geez, I'd really love a lady with green eyes. You got any of those? And it's just the stupidest plan ever. It's so stupid that no one in their right mind would think it would work. So, for the first change I make is, and this plays on the fact that Jack Burton only thinks he's the hero, is Grace and Wang send him in there as a diversion because they know he's incompetent. So, I want to riff on Jack Burton not being the hero a little more. In the original movie, I'm pretty sure he goes in there as part of the plan, right? And everyone's in on the plan. Like, they send him in as a reconnaissance, but, no one would actually think if you just walked in and asked for a lady with green eyes, they'd be like, oh, we just got one. What a coincidence.
And I think that they, I agree with the playing up on the incompetence, because I feel like that they thought it would actually work, because Wang Chi is like, after 10 minutes, this is taking too long, oh my god, and it's like, you just walked into a brothel.
Two minutes.
2 minutes. How long do you think that kind of thing takes?
Clearly,
on now.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you're,
There's
I
some
don't know,
there's
man.
there's some Wang and Jack Burton backstory there that we probably don't need to cover, but
Phrasing.
yeah. See what you did there. And yeah, even like I said, even getting into the Wing Kong exchange, which is the kind of the main building where everything happens, or at least underneath it. He literally, like I said, he walks in there with an actual rotary dial phone, and it's just no security guard would just let them walk in.
And kids, for those of you listening that are under the age of, I don't know, 20, a rotary phone is where the numbers are on a little dial, and you turn the dial to dial a number.
Google it. There's some funny videos on that.
Yeah.
And then, kind of related to that, I'm having it so that the villains are more open about just how stupid the main characters are. So, because the main villain, the three sidekicks, the Thunder, Rain, Lightning, don't really talk that much. But I really want them to just really lay it on thick with how stupid do you think we are? Like, did you actually think walking in here as a maintenance person would work? Right? Like, so I really want the villains just to be kind of a little more sassy to our heroes. Does that make sense?
I think that's a bit of a modernization thing too, though. Like, I think that's just kind of the trend of movies where you have the characters with a little bit more interplay. And I think that kind of modernization I can get behind.
That's fair. That's fair. And then I've also got down here, Egg Shen needs to do a lot of the exposition here. So obviously Margot and Eddie are in the movie to explain things to people. And then when that's no longer required, they literally just leave the movie until the end. So Egg Shen is going to stick around a little bit more and do a little bit of the heavy lifting when it comes to explaining the plot, specifically doing voiceovers when there's a part of the movie where they all go back to base and Gracie has been kidnapped. Apparently no one notices till they're all on the bus. No one notices her extremely loud scream when she's kidnapped directly behind them. And so he does a little bit of voiceover about kind of the Lopan doing the testing. You know, they do that thing with the swords, and then the sidekick villains do some kung fu as part of the ritual for some reason.
Which the sound was not lined up with the sword movement, which drove me crazy. He was like swishing it in the air, and I'm like, the sword swish sound does not match up with the actual movement. Like, I know that this is a gag with like dialogue and dubbing, but dude, come on.
Exactly, yeah. So I want some explanation. I want some voiceover there, like a little montage where you kind of get a little more clarity on, hey, this is who Lopan is. He's, you know, this is why he needs two women with green eyes, and, you know, he's gonna marry one, kill one, he's putting them through these tests. At least to make the generic plot of the villain's ideas make sense. So
I would question the voiceover part, but otherwise I agree. I mean,
fair.
I keep thinking back to like Blade Runner, where they had Deckard or Harrison Ford do the voiceover, and it was like really cheesy, and Harrison Ford didn't even like doing it, and I kind of feel like that it might be a little...
Yeah, and so I think I agree that I have like all the different versions of Blade Runner because I'm a huge Blade Runner fan, and the part with the voiceover in that film is done very poorly. In this one, I think you would have it basically like the original movie where they're back at base and they're talking about what's happening, but you would just intercut that more clearly with the scenes of Lopan doing his testing, so you can kind of see what his plans are and why they have to go back and rescue
So
Gracie.
you can have that kind of Egg Shen explaining to everyone else who wouldn't know what Lopan is going to be doing right now. Is he's going to be doing step 1, he's then going to do step 2, and then do jump cuts into the actual. I see. Yeah, no, I think that could work very good.
Okay, I didn't think about it that way.
All right, perfect. And then kind of the last thing before we get to kind of the final action set pieces is I feel like the Under-Earth needs to be way deeper than in the original.
Oh, yeah.
In the original, they like slide down a fire pole. Someone would have figured out that there's a magic land in your basement, right? So like the idea, for me, I really love the idea.
Yeah, the elevator only goes one floor. Like, what?
Yeah.
A magic land in your basement. I like that.
I really want the Under-Earth to be deep in the Earth's crust, and like that's where like the magic comes from. And so they have to kind of fall down this old well to get down there. you can explain it like they fall down and like the air kind of cushions them or whatever. Like it's just magic in a way. The plot doesn't matter. But I love the idea of when they're in the kind of caves below and there's this kind of like secret world below. I really love that, but they're actually only in there for like 10 minutes. Right?
Yeah.
Until they get to the main arena there. So I want a little more of that. I want a little more of the fighting to happen in those weird under-earth caves. Does that make sense?
It does. One thing I do want to point out about that space is that was one of those hard left turns I was talking about. You get down there, you see this like fog-covered something that you can't see, and Egg Shen is all like, "No, that's the deep earth blood." Or something like that. And
yeah, Jack Burton goes, "You mean oil?" He's like, "No, earth blood."
yes. And like you have that conversation, and you're like creeping around over these rocky crags and bridges, going through here, and then you're in the like basement of a mall. Like
that's what it looked like.
Yeah, like
it looked like they were in the basement of a mall.
Like it just went from deep rocky crag underground that wasn't so deep underground, but somehow you have the lifeblood of the earth flowing in these little crevices, to mall basement. And like that's one of those things that it was just like, where are we going? Okay, cool, something interesting's going to happen, and I'm just kidding. I guess I'm here for this now.
Yeah, just kidding. We've gone down a tiny hole, and now somehow we're in the main villain's lair. That's like, you know.
And to get out, they just like shimmy themselves like through the hole in the ceiling. They just jump up.
Yeah.
It's like that's taller than any of you. You don't have like a ladder or a steps like a rock or something. Like...
Pat, what you said actually just kind of hit me right now. Is like Egg Shen had a fire pole in his closet.
Yeah,
that
forever.
led down into the main villain's super conference room, if you want to call it.
For hundreds of years, apparently.
For hundreds of years, yeah. What?
Yeah. Listen, I don't need it to make sense. I just need it to be cooler. I want to see more of the cool stuff.
I'm starting to fade back to, oh my god, awful movie, man.
Yeah.
It had its listen. It had its moments where I was like, oh, you know what? No, I can put some artsy fartsy stuff behind this and really get behind it. But then we talk about that underworld stuff, and I'm just like, oh wow,
it could be better. It could be better. Yeah,
it was so bad.
All right, kind of the last major thing here is kind of the final set piece. The action is just not good enough. There's a bunch of people running around, and again, this comes down to the budget.
A lot of flips.
A lot of flipping. A lot of flipping and then cutting in the middle of the flip and then landing with another cut because they can't do flips. So I really want it to be more of once Lo Pan becomes human, the three sidekicks have to protect him. And they do in the movie, but none of them really die protecting him except for Rain, which is who's killed by Wang. The other ones just literally, one explodes and one is hit on the head with a rock afterwards. So don't waste a cool villain by making him spontaneously combust. Like, don't do that. That's bad, even in bad movies. Don't waste a cool villain, like the one that shoots lightning, who inspired Raiden from Mortal Kombat, by the way. They literally, at the end of the movie, he's chasing them, they just throw a brick on him. I think it's like a statue or something.
Yeah, he tries to go after them up that hole, aforementioned hole, and they just, it's a statue.
So I want better fight scenes. I actually want Lo Pan to still be killed the way he's killed in the movie, which is Jack Burton just catching something and throwing it directly back at him as a reflex. I think that's fantastic. But I want the other three villains
it's so bad.
To actually have something to do and actually fight people. One of the things I do love about the action is Lo Pan and Egg Shen, their fight, where their like energies connect and they have a fight in the light there with the green and the purple light. That's awesome.
That was pretty good.
They kind of sounded like, they looked like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Like that end scene where Lo Pan and Egg Shen are having that fight with their stones. That sounds
Yeah.
really wrong. But like that, and that scene where they're like, especially when Lo Pan, he like does the thing with the
Yeah.
control. Like it's
He
like
does
he's
the
holding a controller with his thumbs.
He's like using his thumbs
and
like
I'm just like, oh my god, this is like
His
like
face,
a video game.
His face while he's doing the finger. It's just-
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, is Egg Shen gonna be doing some kind of controller action? He's like, no, he's just like, doing a
Like holding a gem or something.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, he just has a
okay.
gem, yeah. So, and again, within their mind palace there where they're fighting, you could make that something cooler as well, right? Like, you could have like a younger versions of themselves fighting or whatever, like a little mind fight.
Oh yeah, you can easily do a Matrix type cut right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make it fit perfectly.
Some low budget CGI, some CGI that is now low budget
Yeah.
can easily.
But revolutionary for like the 80s.
Yeah.
Exactly, yep. So yeah, I think that the final action scene in the big hall there with the neon green dragon and for some reason an escalator.
Yeah.
That's why I said it looked like a mall basement.
yeah.
It might well have been. It might well have been.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's
that's
one
fair.
thing about that end scene that I kept thinking about. It's like us having seen, the Infinity Wars and the Harry Potters and all of the CGI that goes with all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, to us, this movie looked like the CGI, quote unquote, probably looked like garbage. But to someone in 1986 watching this in the theater,
Oh yeah, the
my
effects
God,
are great
it's
for
amazing.
the 80s. Yeah. Yeah, and the effect where they have the guy explode is something that was used often. They use it in like James Bond movies where they shoot the guy with an inflating dart and he inflates and explodes and things like that. So yeah, back then it was great, but like it doesn't, again, that's the problem with like you have to take the action as it's intended to be taken, which is probably okay for the time, but like you're talking less than 10 years later, Terminator 2 action is still so up to date, people walking through metal bars.
Yeah.
Like,
less than 10 years?
yeah, Terminator 2 comes out in like early 90s.
What?
I think it's like 93 or 94.
Yeah, 91.
Yeah.
Was it re-
Oh my god.
5 years later, Terminator 2 comes out, so
And the technology was already like
yeah,
worlds better.
yeah. So yeah, just generally, listen, the action at the end there has got to be better. I would love to have like Jack Burton keep losing to each one of the sidekick villains, and then Wang always kills him. So like Wang has to kill all three side villains, and then Jack Burton gets to just throw a knife at the main villain would be perfect. And then the last thing for the movie, the truck has to do a stunt jump out of the building. It just drives away at the end.
I think, yeah, you're
Does
right. I
it
think
have
they
to?
missed-
It literally has to burst out of the side of the building off of a ramp or something and just onto the road. Like
Triple X style.
yeah, Triple X or like Terminator 2 when they have that truck just like
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
a bomb off the
Yeah.
bridge, something like
I feel
that.
like that was a thing that action movies did in like the late 80s, and they missed an opportunity there.
If you weren't spending millions of dollars and many, many cars worth of, just strewn about the road detritus, you were doing it wrong as an action movie.
In the 80s?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, if you did every great movie of the 90s and like early 2000s had a chase scene, like a car chase scene.
I think it was a requirement.
Movie that was entirely chase scenes. See Speed.
True.
Oh.
It's just one long chase scene, yeah.
Yep.
They get out of the bus and then they go into a train and do another chase scene, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair. I've got one last kind of end scene that I want to talk about, but before we go on to that, does anyone have anything else they would want to see changed in the film?
Yeah. I kind of do, actually.
All right.
I felt the movie stopped and ended at one point. Like when they rescued everybody, I thought the movie had ended. But it was only 45 minutes in.
Yeah, there's two. They have to go back. They go into the same building twice, essentially, right? And do
Right,
the same thing.
right. And that was just so convoluted. And that was one of those hard left turn things that we've been talking about as kind of commonality with this. I think there is a more elegant way to do that while still preserving the movie.
At one point, I considered in the notes putting that they would never go back to the headquarters, that they would
Okay.
just stay in the movie for one long action scene. But I almost feel like that's too much and you need a break. So I didn't do it.
Okay.
But I know what you mean because they go into the White Tiger, then they go into the Wing Kong exchange, and then they just go back there for another action scene, right? So there's action scene at the exchange, back to headquarters, back to the exchange for another action scene, back to headquarters, movie ends.
Right, I guess it's... Make it make sense for me.
I
you
mean,
know?
they
Like,
kind of did in a way, because Gracie got captured. And then like, oh, we got to go back for Gracie and whatever her name is. So let's rearm and gather reinforcements and then go back.
I guess I feel that was entirely too like plot armor driven. Like,
I mean, you could argue that this entire movie was plot armor.
Yeah, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense, right? Because Egg Shen shows up with his soldiers and his magical potion and his magic rock for the second attack. Like, why don't you just show up for the first one? You know what I mean?
That was because Jack was just impatient. I
Yeah.
believe he has a line about, why would we call the cops? What do they want to do? Waste their time dying and stuff?
Yeah.
Or something like that? I don't know. I think I could accept it a little bit more if it were just along the lines of, during the first one, they were actually casing the joint or something like that. Like, make it make more sense to me for why to go back a second time.
I actually agree with... Was it you that said take out the going back to the headquarters?
Yeah, that's
I feel
something
like
I considered.
if we're taking out those two characters, or at least the female, what was her name?
We're taking out Margot and Eddie, the reporter and
That's
the
a
lawyer.
good point.
I mean, you take them out, and then why do you even need to go back?
So maybe they leave the building, and then that's when Egg Shen shows up again with his backup and say, "Why didn't you wait for me?" or something like that.
You can still rescue all the other women without going back.
Fair. Okay. All right. That's fair. So I'm going to end this podcast by giving the last scene I want to change in the movie, which is the very last one. In the original one, we cut to Jack Burton driving the truck again, telling the story over the C radio there. And then the monster, the orange monster, which we really didn't talk about how stupid all the monsters are. Why are they there? But let's just skip past that fact. He sticks his arms out, right? Like it's the monster's coming for him. So we're going to cut to Jack Burton telling that story, in this case played by Jason Momoa. And then as it fades away, instead of the monster jumping out, we cut to a campsite where Kurt Russell is roasting a marshmallow over the fire. He's listening to the radio, the story, and he says, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" And then he puts the marshmallow into a s'more and hands it to the monster. Because
I
they're
think
friends now.
that ending would be great.
I could get behind that.
I
That
could
does
get
sound
behind
great.
that ending too, yeah.
I do not agree, but you go right ahead. This is your remake.
Well, it's like a wink, right? It's like a wink at the audience, like, we
Don't you
know.
think the recasting of Egg Shen is a wink enough?
No, we should wink as many
Let's
times as
just keep
possible.
going with it.
We need to really cash in on the nostalgia of the 80s, 80s
If you're going
children.
to cash in, then go right ahead.
You have to on a movie like this. Like, you gotta lean hard into the nostalgia factor and the cult classic factor because it ain't getting made any other way.
No, if people who weren't born in the 80s and 90s don't buy tickets to this movie, no one is. No one in their 20s right now, no one's born after the year 2000 is going to go buy a ticket to this movie. Thanks for listening to the very first episode of the Original Remake Podcast. If you'd like to provide feedback or have a question, please email us at remake.cast@gmail.com. We'll be releasing episodes bi-weekly, so check back in 2 weeks as we remake the 2018 film Ready Player One.